What's the nature of your emergency?
Good morning, police, fire, military, and families, and to everybody who is listening in on the Tactical Living podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by my friend, Patrick Faulkner. Patrick, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show, Ashley.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. It's been a long time coming. And for anybody who's wondering, yes, that is a green screen. Patrick is not sitting out on his front porch drinking coffee. You've gotten that question before, so I thought I would mention that because I thought it was really funny. And this is not a green screen behind me. And this is actually our very first live interview for the year. We did, I want to say I interviewed well over 100 people last year, which I'm always so grateful to do because anytime that somebody is willing to gift their time to me, I'm certainly appreciative of that. So Patrick, thank you so much. And we're going to get into your story, but you and I connected because you actually have your own podcast. And if you read here under or by Patrick's name, it says The Knock and Talk Show. It is so entertaining. I highly recommend you go and download all of his episodes. He is continuing to bring on incredible guests and guests that share stories. And, we're going to get into that. But first, Patrick, I want to know a little bit about your background, who you are, and kind of the synopsis of how you are now versus how you came to be.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'll do the Reader's Digest version since we're, not going to be doing a 3-hour marathon interview. I went to high school in Baltimore. Actually, I was born in Florida, and we moved around quite a bit. My dad worked for Motorola and ended up working in the public safety division of Motorola. But we moved around because of his promotions and graduated high school in Baltimore. And then I moved to Birmingham after my grandmother passed away to live with my grandfather, help him out right after she passed away. And it only took about 6 months of listening to his romantic stories of the Second World War and all the things that he saw and got to do in the Army Air Corps while stationed in England that I joined the Air Force. And I spent 4 years as an F-16 avionics technician stationed at Moody Air Force Base down in Valdosta, Georgia. And if you've ever been to Valdosta, Georgia, I'm sorry. If you don't ever go, you're not missing anything. After 4 years, from 95 to 99, there was more job opportunities in Metro Atlanta than there was in South Georgia. So my parents had moved from Baltimore to Atlanta with my dad's job. And I just moved up, and that started my law enforcement career. I started off at the Gwinnett County Police Department in North Metro Atlanta. I was there 6 years, and then I moved to a small town that was 2 square miles. It was a 7-man police department. There wasn't a traffic light in town, and there was 250 something bedrooms in the whole city. So it was a very small town. I felt like Barney Fife and asked the chief on a regular basis if I could put my bullets in my gun, just, to be funny. And I was there 2 years, and the city couldn't afford the police department anymore. This was during the first bubble burst, 2007, 2009. So they closed the doors, gave the law enforcement duties over to the sheriff's office, and I ended up at a college police department in Gwinnett County. So I went back into Gwinnett. There, I was there 4 years. Finally made sergeant 6 months in, and 6 months later, I was given a narcotics dog. And actually went to Alabama Law Enforcement Canine Training Center, Alabama Canine for short. So shout out to Ricky Farley. That was a great time. It was the best job I had in law enforcement. And I had she was 40 pounds, female chocolate lab. dynamite dog. Made me look good as a handler. 10 months after being partnered up with her, we did a training camp down in Orlando, and we actually ended up winning a competition. I didn't even know it was a competition. And I took home a trophy that was about 6 inches shorter than I was.
We have that picture in the promo picture, right? Is that the trophy you're talking about?
Yes. And then I tore my rotator cuff about 7 years ago, and that was my gun hand, and that was the same time frame that the Michael Brown stuff was happening out in the Midwest of hands up, don't shoot, can't breathe, all that stuff. So when I actually got better, my wife said, "I don't care. You're not getting back into law enforcement. Find something else to do." So I bounced around from career job to job, and then eventually said, "You know what? I'm going to take a shot at entrepreneurialism," and started a couple of companies. And currently, I own a new business consulting firm that helps aspiring and new business owners actually form their business entity legally, sort of like LegalZoom without the huge price tag. So I wrote an ebook as a step-by-step in the process, so you could do it yourself instead of having to pay somebody to do it, or you can pay me to do it and I'll do it for you, which is great because my wife is a CPA and owns her own firm. So it's a good connect where I can get new business owners started and then pass them off to her, and she can take care of their tax planning and make sure that they are able to keep the majority of their profits and not give it back to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am a big proponent of making sure that we have multi-streams of revenue. Good morning to everybody who's tuning in. And I don't want to forget to say, what am I giving away today, Patrick? Do you remember? I know it was a knife. What's it called?
It's the Batman blade.
It is called the Dark Knight Twin Blade Knife. So to whoever comments the most within 24 hours, you can ask questions, talk to each other. If you have any questions for Patrick while he's live or while we're done, please let us know and we'll make sure to get to them. And Patrick, you mentioned that your father worked in Motorola, and I'm bringing that up because you actually have a super sweet story about how there's a connection there with how that led you to become a police officer in the first place. So can you share that?
Oh, yeah. Dad worked for Motorola his whole life, basically after college. And he ended up working here in Metro Atlanta in the public safety division of Motorola, and on the MARTA, which is the I don't know, the subway, it's the trail line or the mass transit system for Metro Atlanta, their buses and their trams. And he worked for their police department and designing and upgrading their law enforcement radio equipment. And I don't really know where to take this story after that.
It's okay. It's funny because before we hopped on here, I had told Patrick about his nickname, and he was like, "How did you know that?" So I'm dropping questions with previous knowledge, and you made mention of a commercial that you had seen when you were younger that had Motorola on it.
Yes. Okay. All right. Yes. Thanks for. Anyway, there was a TV show when I was growing up called Chips. Some of you may know it. Millennials may not know it. Although no, there was a movie. It was an awful movie. Paid no real tribute to the TV show, but there was a TV show called Chips. And it was all about the California Highway Patrol. And the intro to that TV show was a super cool 70s disco style song. But it would do flashes of the characters and their motorcycles because it's all about two motor cops. And there's this section in the intro that shows them grabbing a Motorola radio, and you can see the emblem plain as day. And it's there for 2 seconds. And that was the coolest show ever growing up because that had Dad's radio in the show. And that was part of what led to my desire to get into law enforcement, was those stories out of Chips and the things those guys got to do. And even though I've never been on a motorcycle, I have no desire to ever get on a motorcycle. And that's actually a story for, maybe today or another day. I came close. I was actually in a Harley dealership on my lunch break as a detective, because both my sergeants were motors guys, and they were trying to get everybody in the unit to get on a bike so we could do unit trips on the weekends. And so I was there. I was filling out the paperwork, and an accident with injuries was called out right in front of the Harley dealership, and it was a fatality where a motorcyclist turned left and right in front of a passenger vehicle. And whenever a motorcyclist meets a passenger vehicle, it doesn't usually end up well for the motorcyclist. So unfortunately, that person passed away, but I felt like that was God telling me, you don't need to be on a motorcycle. So I took the application back away from the guy and went out and directed traffic while the uniform officers did the investigation. So, but I loved that show, Chips, and that is probably the first nail in the foundation of me getting into law enforcement.
Thank you for sharing that. I thought that was such a sweet and cool story, because we don't always realize how such small things like that have a giant influence on us when we get older. And Clint and I were just recording an episode about the influence of people who say negative things to us when we're younger, and how incidentally that carries over, and we might not even realize it until we do the deep work and we start to really think about it. So I thought that was an awesome story. So thank you for sharing that. And I had talked about your nickname 2%, and I want to link that as a segue for us to be able to talk about why you believe that humor is such an important element of life, and maybe how you might have made a transition with carrying that over after your career in law enforcement. So tell us a story about how your nickname of 2% came to be.
Okay. All right. So picture this. I'll take you back 4 years prior. When I joined the Air Force, I had to gain 5 pounds in order to get into the Air Force. I was 110 out of high school, and I had to be 115. So I went on a McDonald's and Burger King binge the week before MEPS, final MEPS, to weigh in. So fast forward 4 years, I weighed 125 when I got out of the Air Force. And I'm not a tall guy. I'm 5'7" with my boots on first thing in the morning. And so when we graduated the academy, they just issued us a bunch of uniforms and didn't give us time to have them tailored before we did our graduation picture. And then they sent us out to field training. So I show up to the first night of field training on the graveyard shift in the most high-speed precinct of the Gwinnett County Police Department, West Side Precinct. And my uniform was super wrinkly. It was way baggy. My pants were too long. The sleeves were too long. And this was, I guess, April-ish. So it was still kind of brisk at night. So we had to wear long sleeves. And the first crack as soon as I walk into roll call was, "Hey, kid, does your dad know you're wearing his uniform?" And it went from there. They took phone books and duct taped them together and put them in my driver's seat so that I could see over the steering wheel. They would put car seats in my seat, both when I was riding with my training officer or if I was driving that night. There was always going to be a car seat in my seat. So that to sort of give you a background of how jolly these guys were and how accommodating they were to my needs as a vertically challenged officer. And I come into roll call and they're passing out a bolo, and I'm sure everybody knows that to be on the lookout of a missing child. And the picture of that bolo could have been my third grade picture. I mean, it was me without the mole. And so they started, did your mom know where you're at? Hey, call Faulkner's mom, would you? Let him know he's wearing his dad's uniform again. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And that first week, this is all in the first week of field training with these guys. that first week, every call we went on the midnight shift either had a naked woman, a scantily clad, dressed woman, or just an overly drunk, high, out of her mind, flirtatious woman. And this one particular call was a DUI traffic accident where it was a single car. She hit a phone booth. Or a phone pole, and she was coming back from the club. It was like 3:00 in the morning, and she was wearing her club gear. So stripper clothes plus one layer. And she had some work done. Like maybe God didn't bless her with everything she wanted. So she added some fluff to. Anyway,
that's such a classy way to put it, Patrick.
I'm trying here. And she was I was given the duty of making sure she doesn't fall over, she doesn't hurt herself, because again, she is drunk, she failed field sobriety. And my training officer just wanted to see me squirm. So she kept reaching out to touch my hands, and I'm like, please don't touch me, please don't touch me. And every time I would take a step back, I would look down to see what was behind me, because we were in a parking lot, and those tire stoppers were in each parking space. So I didn't want to trip over that and look like an idiot. So I would look down. And this one particular time that I looked down, she had already stepped forward. I hadn't stepped back. And the tow truck driver yells over to my training officer, "Hey, look at your rookie." And from their point of view, my head is down. Her inflatables were here. And so then the breast milk joke. Because Bolo are on milk cartons. And well, I couldn't be whole milk because I was a short guy. So it ended up being 2% milk, and that stuck. So there is your long explanation into 2%.
Well, I love it. Thank you for getting into that and sharing that with us. I thought that was funny because
since 1999.
Well, you have one more person who's going to be calling you 2% now. And
all right.
I think that it really says a lot to the notion of how a lot of officers will deflect with humor. And I'm wondering, because in your pre-interview questionnaire, you had said on here there is a high importance in finding the humor in things and being able to laugh at ourselves. So why is something like being called 2% and not being a little bitch about it, why is that so important for all of us?
Well, in law enforcement, very similar to the military world, you earn your nickname. You don't give yourself a nickname. You earn it. So you've done something, whether it was good or bad, to get it. So you just sort of have to accept it. And I knew if the guys didn't like me, then they wouldn't have gone through the trouble of naming me. And I've had a couple other short-term nicknames in my career, but the one that always stuck and stayed was 2%. And the reason why, it was humorous. And I spent a year and a half in the special victims unit. And little hashtag side notes, I wish I could have solved the crimes in 1 hour to include commercials. I don't know how those guys on SVU. But anyway, there were a lot of dark moments, a lot of dark times in that unit, but as well as in patrol. I mean, you see the evil in everyone. And it's very rare that out sort of in the wild, you get an opportunity to smile or laugh. And I've always been raised in the notion that laughter is some of the best medicine you can have. And if we can't laugh, if we can't joke around, the job is way too serious. It's way too dark, and we'll implode. There's a high amount of alcoholism in law enforcement, in the military, because officers don't know how to decompress that day. I mean, they go from an alarm call that they've been on 3 times that shift, 4 times the shift before, to an accident with injuries with a fatality. It's a gruesome scene, to a kid that doesn't want to make his bed or wash the dishes, to a robbery or burglary in progress, to a traffic stop where they have to fight somebody, and that's all in an 8-hour shift. There's got to be a way to release that, and humor is the easiest way to do it because there's humor in almost all of that. So when I first got to Special Victims Unit, my sergeant told me 2 jokes, and I'm not going to tell them because they're awful jokes. But he told me 2 jokes, and he said, right now, you better find these jokes horrifying. In 2 months, you better laugh at them or you need to leave. And I mean, they truly are awful jokes. So like when I've had maybe 1 or 2 too many bourbons and I'm in a non-police party or gathering and people want to hear, stories. And if I don't particularly care for those people, I'll tell those 2 jokes and they walk away and I don't have to deal with them anymore. And I'll tell you the jokes off camera if you'd like, or if anybody would like to hear them. They're really bad. So anyway, we have to be able to laugh. We've got to be able to work through some of that, and you've got to do it together so that you're not alone. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, in humor, we got to laugh at ourselves. We can laugh at each other. We got to laugh at ourselves. Or it's the wrong career because it's too deep too often not to laugh.
Yeah. And I love that because typically humor is a shared experience. So that's actually not even something that I've ever thought about before. And humor is something that I love being around. So no matter how horrible those jokes are, yes, I do want to hear them. And before we wrap this up, Patrick, congratulations on your son entering basic training. I saw you posted the picture of that. And I'm curious to know what talks or maybe what advice you might have given to him that might pour over to somebody else who perhaps is just starting their career in law enforcement or joining the military.
Son, you should have joined the Air Force. My son Morgan was able to use his cell phone on Sundays for about 30 minutes. So I would get about a 7-minute phone call every Sunday while he was in basic training. And the second phone call he called, he said, "Dad, I've already had that moment." I was like, "What moment?" He said, "That I wish I would have joined the Air Force moment." So, but, I guess my advice to someone starting out, whether it's in law enforcement or military, it's pay attention. The guys and gals before you have paved that path for you to now walk. There will be times that's easy, times that are fun, times that suck, and then times that really suck. And when they really suck, you need to pay attention to what those other people around you are doing to see how they're coping with the suck. I mean, I was in the Air Force, but I know there's an Army saying, or maybe it's a Marine saying, but embrace the suck. And you have to. Otherwise, again, it's the wrong job for you.
That's beautiful advice. And I love that so much because it's actually transferable, right? Like no matter what profession, that's something we can all use. Such a good tactic to get people away, right? Just drop some really horrible jokes, have someone in your back pocket. Yeah, that's exactly why I want Patrick to tell me his bad jokes. Awesome. Well, Patrick, how can people get a hold of you if people want to know more about you or listen to your show? What is the plug that you want to put in?
Yeah, so hashtag Knock and Talk Show. You can find us at Facebook / Knock and Talk Show, knockandtalk.com. We're on Apple Podcast as well as Spotify and Google and Amazon Podcasts and Samsung Podcast, all the big ones. You can find us there. If you want a quick and easy way to get to all those, just go to knockandtalk.com.
And if somebody wants to potentially be a guest on your podcast, what is the criteria of somebody that you're looking for?
Military veteran, law enforcement veteran, first responder of any kind. So the firemen, EMS folks, even dispatchers, corrections officers. There's humor in everywhere, and everybody's got stories. And again, actually, I appreciate you allowing me to plug, but my podcast is all about the funny stories. and the stories need to be told so they can be shared and not die when we go, and not be lost and forgotten. And I've had the opportunity to hear some great stories from some amazing people, and I would love to have more. So it's really simple. It's unscripted, very similar to this. We just chase rabbits wherever the rabbits go, and share the funny stories.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you to everyone who is listening, knockandtalk.com. And yeah, if people don't start commenting more, then I might just keep that Batman knife for myself, because it's pretty badass. But thank you. It is, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, you guys. Have a really awesome day. And Patrick, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, everybody be safe.